They weren't supposed to see it that night. That's the part nobody wants to admit, even now. The observation schedule was routine, the sky was steady, the instruments humming in their familiar midnight rhythm, until a single frame flickered onto the main screen and every person in the control room went silent. If you listen to the archived audio, you can actually hear it. The absence of breathing, that instant of collective disbelief when trained professionals realize the universe has just handed them something they were never prepared to witness. The frame showed an object that shouldn't have been visible at that resolution, at that distance, at that angle. A shape too crisp, too defined, too deliberate. They didn't know yet what they were looking at. They only knew this. Whatever 3I ATLAS was, it wasn't just passing by anymore. The night began like thousands of others at the Mount Kirkland Observatory in Arizona, the kind that fade into each other over years of data logs and quiet discoveries. Dr. Helena Hayes was leading the shift, a senior astronomer with a reputation for impossible precision and a habit of drinking her coffee cold because she always forgot she'd poured it. She was checking a stack of scheduled targets when the automated system pinged a new priority flag. A faint signature had crossed the wide-field deep sky array earlier than predicted, just enough of a deviation to trigger a recalibration request. Nothing unusual, just another rock doing something slightly annoying. Helena sighed, pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose, and tapped the console to bring the object into the high-resolution pipeline. She expected noise, maybe a streak, maybe nothing. Instead, she got a shape. Solid, symmetrical, clean. It sat in the blackness like a cutout from a different universe, lit by a sun it should not have reflected so evenly. Helena blinked once, then again. Artifact, someone muttered behind her. It had to be. Cosmic rays, sensor glitch, compression error, there were 100 ways a telescope could lie. But Helena didn't move. She leaned closer, her fingers hovering over the console, and whispered the kind of sentence no scientist ever wants to hear themselves say. Run it again. The second frame came in. The shape was still there, the same edges, the same impossible clarity. A cold pulse went through the room, thin, sharp, electric. This time no one spoke. They didn't need to. On the third frame, the object shifted slightly, not in position, but in orientation, as if it had turned a fraction of a degree, revealing a contour no natural interstellar body should have. That was when Dr. Marcus Lorne, the senior orbital analyst on duty, pushed his rolling chair closer and exhaled through clenched teeth. "That's not a comet," he said. And for the first time that night, everyone felt it. The slow, rising pressure of something ancient and primal, the quiet terror that comes when reality stops behaving like reality. The room snapped into motion. Commands flew across keyboards, calibration routines cascaded down the monitors, and telescopes across the array slewed in unison to confirm the target. Within 2 minutes, 3 separate instruments locked onto the same point in the sky. All 3 returned identical results. The object was real, stable, sharp, and approaching. The relief came next, the brief moment of psychological self-rescue when the mind tries to stitch nonsense back into something familiar. It has to be tumbling, Marcus insisted, running a stabilization algorithm. The imaging rate just syncs up perfectly with the rotation, that's all. But the model refused to converge. The data wouldn't bend. The shape held. No blur, no smear, no light variations across the surface. Try a shape fit, spheroid, elongated, anything. They tried. None matched. Not even roughly. Comets don't look like that. Asteroids don't hold that symmetry. And interstellar fragments? They never survive long enough to appear so intact. The screen showed the timestamp. 01:14:32. 3 seconds later, another frame clicked in. The object had grown brighter. Not much, just a whisper of luminance, but enough to indicate it was closer than the models said it should be. Marcus ran the orbital solver again. It spit out a path that made no sense. Then a correction value. Then another. Then almost angrily, it returned an error Helena had never seen in her entire career. Trajectory undefined. Please verify gravitational model. What does that even mean? One of the technicians asked, voice cracking. Helena didn't answer. She typed in the command manually, adjusted the epoch timing, scaled the solar mass constant, and reran the solver. Same result. The numbers suggested the object wasn't on a natural hyperbolic flyby. It wasn't passing through the solar system. It was adjusting. But that couldn't be. Nothing adjusts in interstellar space. Nothing that humans know about. The tension in the room thickened, pulsing in slow waves between rising panic and forced rationality. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else swore under their breath. Helena kept her eyes on the monitor, refusing to look away from the object that had no right to exist in the form they were seeing. A new frame arrived. The object now showed a faint line along one of its edges, a contour, reflecting sunlight like a ridge. Except ridges form on rock by geological processes. This one looked straight. Artificially straight. How far is it? Helen asked. Marcus checked the parallax output. Stared. Checked again. Closer than predicted. Much closer. How much? He hesitated. That alone told me everything. 37,000 kilometers closer. No one moved. No one breathed. That's impossible, the technician whispered. Not unless it accelerated, Marcus finished. The word hung in the air like a verdict. Acceleration implied force. Force implied control. And control implied intention. Helena rubbed her forehead, trying to push away the pounding pressure building behind her eyes. We need external confirmation, she said. Call Blue Mesa, wake them if you need to. The call went through in 27 seconds. Blue Mesa Observatory, 200 miles away, pointed their primary scope at the coordinates. There was a pause. Then a voice crackled through the speakers, tight and unsteady. Mount Kirkland, we see it. Same structure, same reflection profile. And motion? Helena asked. Another pause. Longer. Hold on. Jesus, okay, it's accelerating. Very slightly, but definitely accelerating. Your readings are correct. Someone in the room whispered, No, no, no! Helena closed her eyes for a moment, not to calm down. She was far past that, but to force her brain to keep functioning. There was too much at stake to freeze now. The next wave hit without warning. The object shifted orientation again, clearly, unmistakably, between two consecutive frames. A controlled turn. Subtle, precise, impossible. The midpoint twist of the night slammed into them like a physical blow. 3I ATLAS wasn't drifting toward Earth. It was aligning with Earth. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier, as if the walls themselves understood the implications. No interstellar object had ever behaved like this. No natural body had ever shown deliberate vector correction. Helena felt her mouth grow dry. She said, Start recording all data streams. Every instrument, every wavelength. The screens lit up with cascading numbers, spectral lines, microwave background interference, reflectance models. But through it all, the object remained impossibly silent, black where it should shine, bright where it should dim, and steady in ways that mocked physics. Then, as they watched, something changed, a faint pulse, a flicker at the exact moment the telescope's longest-range sensor passed across its surface. It wasn't an emission. It wasn't a reflection. It felt like acknowledgement, as if the object had noticed them. Helena's heart kicked hard against her ribs. Everyone stay on the feed, she said quietly. No one spoke. No one looked away. Minutes passed in suffocating silence. Then, the final punch of the night arrived in the simplest, most devastating way possible. The object moved. Not drifting, not rotating, responding. Its trajectory curved a fraction of a degree, directly toward the line of sight from Mount Kirkland Observatory, as if it were turning its face toward the people watching it. And then the frame froze. Connection stable, data flawless. The only thing that changed was the shape. in the sky. It looked back.
For a moment, everyone in the room forgot that space is silent. They could almost hear it, watching them back. The next frame arrived without delay, but something in it felt different. Heavier, as if a subtle pressure pressed through the screen. Helena leaned forward, her breath shallow, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is everyone seeing this?" No one answered. They didn't need to. The object was closer again, too close for the elapsed time between frames, as if distance itself meant nothing to it. And then something even stranger happened. The bright edge of the object, once steady and knife-sharp, softened just a little, like a pupil adjusting to light. Not expanding, not contracting, just responding. "Is that—" a technician began, but the words died in his throat. Helena forced her mind back into motion. She needed to document everything, to anchor the impossible with data before it evaporated into disbelief. "Timestamp the last 3 frames," she said. "Run a differential overlay. Look for shape deformation, radiance fluctuation, anything we can measure." Marcus's fingers trembled as he typed. The algorithm chewed through the frames, pixel by pixel, searching for change. It found it instantly. "There," he said, pointing to a faint distortion near the object's surface. "It's not rotation, it's not outgassing, it's something else." Helena zoomed in. The distortion flickered rhythmically, like a slow heartbeat. Not biological, no, that would be too easy, but cyclical, patterned, intentional. The heartbeat of a mechanism. She swallowed. "How long until the next scheduled ephemeris update?" 20 minutes, Marcus said, "but based on this..." He trailed off, staring at the numbers marching down the screen. "The predicted path is degrading. The solver can't keep up. It changes its trajectory every time we observe it." That sentence hit the room like a labored exhale. The object wasn't just reacting to gravity, it was reacting to attention. Helena's pulse hammered in her ears. She suddenly became hyper-aware of the cameras, the microphones, the network connections linking their observatory to others across the region. "Shut down outbound data streams," she said sharply. "All of them. Mirror locally only." "Protocol requires we ping the NASA relay," a technician protested weakly. "Not yet," Helena snapped. "I want a clean data set first." It was a flimsy excuse, and everyone knew it. But no one argued. Something primal in each of them agreed, whatever this thing was, broadcasting its presence across every scientific relay on the continent, felt like a terrible idea. The room dimmed as Helena cut the uplinks. The servers hummed louder, as if even the machines sensed the rising tension. Another frame clicked in. The object had brightened again, but this time the luminance wasn't uniform. A narrow crescent glowed along its edge, a shape too smooth, too mathematically consistent to be a natural albedo effect. Light reflected off rock is chaotic, noisy. This curve looked engineered, sculpted. "Could it be a trick of the sensor?" Marcus whispered. "Interference from solar scatter?" "Solar scatter at this angle?" Helena shook her head. "Impossible." A wave of unease rolled through the room. The technicians exchanged glances, each one searching the other's faces for reassurance, for sanity, for some sign that this was still within the realm of known physics. But no comfort came. The unease turned to dread when the next update arrived. The object had accelerated again. The solver plotted its new path and output a trajectory that made Helena's stomach clench. A gradual arc bending directly into Earth's orbital boundary. Not a collision course, not yet, but closing the distance,
consistently, deterministically, purposefully. "Magnitude now 8.4, Marcus said, his voice cracking. "If it keeps brightening at this rate, we'll have a full reflectance model within an hour," Helena finished. But she didn't sound relieved. Because full resolution meant full clarity, and full clarity was the last thing she wanted. For a brief moment, someone in the back tried to break the tension with logic. "Look, maybe this is a fragment of something larger. Maybe the geometry is a coincidence. Maybe the acceleration is outgassing from a volatile seam." Helena didn't look at him. She didn't need to. His voice was shaking. His hands were gripping the console edge so tightly the knuckles shone white. No one in the room believed in coincidence anymore. At 01:37:52, the object shifted again, fast enough that the change registered between frames, slow enough to look deliberate. A new angle emerged, revealing 3 dim linear markings running parallel along one surface. Not cracks, not mineral veins, lines, straight, evenly spaced, symmetrical. "Those are structural," Marcus whispered. "Have to be." "Zoom," Helena murmured. The computer complied. The lines grew sharper, revealing minute deviations, like paneling. Paneling on an interstellar object. Helena felt the world tilt, as if gravity itself had glitched. Her mouth filled with a metallic taste, the kind that comes before fainting or revelation. "Tell me it's a trick of lighting," she said, though she already knew the answer. Marcus didn't respond. His silence was answer enough. A tremor passed through the room, not of sound, but of collective understanding. Something was very wrong. Something was very close, and something was very aware. Another frame arrived. The object filled more of the viewing window now, large enough that Helena felt physically invaded by its presence, as if it wasn't just approaching Earth, it was approaching them. "What's the range?" she asked. Marcus ran the numbers. His voice dropped to a whisper, soft and defeated. "It's within 1.8 astronomical units and closing faster than any predicted model." The technician beside him let out a slow exhale, halfway between a breath and a sob. Then the lights flickered. Just once, just enough to turn every head toward the ceiling. "Power surge?" someone asked, but Helena knew better. Their grid had redundancies, surge dampeners, internal isolators. Nothing should flicker. The monitors glowed again, stable now as if nothing had happened, but Helena's heartbeat had doubled. She forced her voice steady. "Marcus, run thermal analysis." Marcus typed. The results appeared instantly and froze him. Helena spun her chair to look at the numbers. Surface temperature, steady. No variation, no thermal gradient, no heating from solar input. "That's not possible," she said. The technician whispered, "Nothing that cold survives interstellar transit without heating. Nothing." But the object remained cold, constant, self-regulated, as if temperature meant nothing to it. A chill crawled up Helena's arms. "It isn't interacting thermally with sunlight. Then what does it interact with?" "Us," someone whispered. The words hit Helena like a slap. She turned slowly. "Who said that?" No one answered, or maybe no one knew. Because the idea was already blooming in every mind in the room, terrifying in its simplicity. Every time they observed it, the object behaved differently. Every time they pointed an instrument at it, it responded. Every time they looked at it, it looked back. At 01:51:00, the midpoint twist sealed itself in the data forever. The object adjusted course again, not drifting, not pulled, but pivoting, turning its forward vector precisely along the line of sight from the largest telescope at Mount Kirkland. The probability of coincidence was effectively zero. This was response behavior, and response implied awareness. The room went silent, the kind of silence usually reserved for funerals or miracles. Helena felt her throat tighten. She said softly, "Everyone, I want you to stay calm. Stay on task. Do not panic." But even as she said the words, she could feel panic prickling under her skin, rising like static. The next frame arrived. The object was closer than ever. And then something shifted deep inside the image. A ripple, a distortion, a faint suggestion of movement beneath its surface. As if something within the object had awakened. Helena's breath caught. The technicians froze. Marcus leaned closer, his eyes wide, pupils dilated. Was that... Run it again, Helena whispered.
By sunrise, the object had a name the world wasn't supposed to hear. 3I/Atlas, the third interstellar visitor ever confirmed, and the first to act like it had something resembling intent. But inside Mount Kirkland Observatory, no one cared about naming conventions anymore. They cared about the numbers. And by 06:12 a.m., the numbers made even the most rational, grounded scientists in the room feel like they were standing on a trapdoor that could open beneath them at any second. The orbital solver hadn't slept. It had been running all night, recalculating the object's trajectory every time a new frame arrived. And every recalculation told the same story. The object wasn't following a gravitational path. It wasn't reacting to solar wind. It wasn't being pushed by outgassing or heated jets or tumbling torque. It was altering its own motion, deliberately, incrementally, precisely. Marcus stared at the data stream as it waiting for it to apologize. Acceleration is still increasing, not linearly, curved, like a guidance profile, Helena finished. She hadn't slept either. Her hair was a mess, her voice was sandpaper, and the coffee in her hand was cold before she even remembered she had poured it. They'd rerun the motion data 100 times. Every time, the same unsettling truth emerged. 3I/Atlas was matching not the gravitational environment, but something else entirely. Something uncomfortably close to Earth's orbital velocity. When the technicians arrived for the morning shift, they walked into a room that felt like a bunker after an explosion. Everyone silent, hollow-eyed, staring at screens as if the wrong pixel might trigger the apocalypse. "What's going on?" one of them asked. No one answered. Not until Helena lifted her trembling finger and pointed at the largest display. "Look." The technician squinted at the numbers. "What am I looking at?" "The drift," Marcus said. And then the diagram animated, the predicted path versus the observed path. The difference was small, very small, but unmistakable. Observed path, a slight, consistent deviation. Predicted path, a clean gravitational arc. The lines should have overlapped. They didn't. "That could just be non-gravitational acceleration from sublimation," the technician offered, "because that was what you were supposed to say when you saw an incomprehensible orbital anomaly. Comets burp jets all the time. Outgassing was the universal band-aid for celestial misbehavior." But Helena shook her head. "There's no coma, no dust, no thermal signature." "So maybe it's too faint to detect." "No," she snapped, louder than she intended. Then softer, "No, this isn't sublimation." Marcus zoomed into the vector diagram. The acceleration isn't random. It's directional. It's compensating for rotation drift. It's stabilizing itself. The technician blinked. Stabilizing? Like a spacecraft? The room stiffened. Even saying the word felt forbidden. Helena exhaled slowly, fighting the urge to reject everything outright. "We're not calling it anything. Not yet." But the unspoken word lingered in the air, thick and metallic, clinging to the walls. Spacecraft. They ran new diagnostics, position, velocity, brightness, thermal flux, every metric they could measure, and with every one, the tension ratcheted higher. The brightness curve rose too smoothly, not chaotic like reflected sunlight, smooth like controlled exposure. The shape remained too sharp, no tumbling, no spin decay, no chaotic wobble. The trajectory updated too frequently, not drifting, steering. At 07:04 a.m., the Blue Mesa Observatory sent its latest position update. But this time, they didn't send numbers. They sent a message, a short one. A message no one at Mount Kirkland expected. You're not imagining it. It's correcting its course. Helena felt sweat prick at the back of her neck. Marcus reread the message twice. This can't be real. It can't be doing that. Nothing can do that. But something was doing it. The drift was subtle enough that the public would never notice, but blatant enough that no professional astronomer on Earth could ignore it. The experienced ones, the ones who'd spent decades halting cosmic nonsense with nothing but coffee and math, looked at the numbers with the same expression soldiers wear when they've run out of ammunition. "Let's model the thrust profile," Helena said. Marcus stared at her. "We don't even know if it has thrust." "It changes velocity," Helena replied. "That's thrust. Put a name on it later." 10 minutes later, they had a crude model. Not elegant, not final, but terrifying. The acceleration curve resembled that of a vehicle adjusting to maintain a specific trajectory, not a random force acting on a natural object. And the target vector? Earth's orbital lane. Not a collision, but a synchronizing approach. "What's it made of?" a technician asked weakly. "If it's not outgassing, not reflecting normally, not heating, what's its surface?" Helena pinched her bridge of her nose. "Something we don't have a category for." Then the next shock arrived from the spectral analysis team across the room. "Helena, you need to see this." She crossed the room, dread gnawing at her lungs. On the screen, 3 spectral lines appeared. Clean, perfect, identical in every exposure. "Those lines shouldn't exist," she said. "Interstellar objects always show variation." We checked for calibration drift. And no drift. Marcus joined them. "Play the time series." They did. The spectral lines didn't just remain consistent, they remained identical down to the photon count. A perfect match. Frame to frame, minute to minute, hour to hour. "It's not reflecting sunlight," Marcus whispered. "It's repeating it." Helena felt the floor tilt beneath her. Not because the object was mimicking starlight, but mimicry implies choice. And if it could choose what to show them, then it could choose what not to show them. "We're not seeing it. We're seeing the version of it it lets us see." The room became a vacuum, silent, suffocating, cold. Then another voice broke the stillness. A young intern, barely 20, staring at the motion graph with shaking hands. "Dr. Hayes, look." The latest frame had arrived. The drift had changed. Not just direction, pattern. The object was no longer making subtle course corrections. It was adjusting like a drone entering a holding position, a controlled deceleration, a stability lock, a deliberate slowing. "It's preparing for something," Marcus whispered. Helena felt ice in her chest as the horrifying answers settled over her. Such as arrival. The word hovered in the air, radioactive. At 07:51 a.m., the U.S. network relay pinged the observatory. Helena froze. They hadn't sent anything out, not a single update. So why was a government relay calling them? She didn't answer. She didn't move. The relay pinged again. A technician swallowed hard. "Do we pick up?" Helena didn't. Instead, she cut the communication line. Everyone stared at her, stunned. "If they already know," Helena said, "it means this isn't a discovery, it's a containment." And she was right, because 5 seconds later, the wide-field camera triggered automatically. A new frame appeared, of 3I/Atlas, closer, sharper, centered, and moving. Not along a path, not along an orbit, but impossibly drifting sideways, like something correcting for wind in a vacuum where no wind existed.
Objects don't do that, the intern whispered. Helena watched the screen, her pulse a violent, panicked drum. This one does. Then, with cruel timing, the object brightened, just a flicker like a blink. At the exact moment the observatory's primary scope pivoted for a better angle, as if acknowledging the attention, as if saying, "I see you too." Marcus's voice cracked. What is it responding to? Helena felt her knees weaken as the horrifying answer settled over her.
By late evening, the mountain had gone unnaturally quiet. Not the peaceful, meditative quiet astronomers were used to, but the kind that settles right before something irreversible happens, like the hush that falls across a city seconds before an earthquake. Mount Kirkland Observatory wasn't supposed to be awake for a third consecutive night, yet not a single person had left the building. Nobody even discussed going home. The fear of walking away, of missing whatever 3i ATS would do next, had fused them to their screens. At 2014, the newest frame came in. The room went still. The object had stopped drifting, not slowing, stopped. Hung motionless against the void like an idea, not an object, a fixed point in a universe that did not allow fixed points. "That's impossible," Marcus murmured. His voice cracked from exhaustion. "Nothing can stop in space." Helena didn't respond. She was watching the brightness profile evolving in real time, the faint curve of luminous reflection sharpening, smoothing, growing unnervingly even. It was shaping itself again, aligning its surface to their angle of view, like a mirror turning toward a face. Then the front doors slammed open. Heavy footsteps filled the entrance hallway, echoing up the concrete stairwell. Every head snapped up. "Who's here at this hour?" a technician whispered. Helena already knew. She felt it in her chest before she heard it in the air. They hadn't been alone in this. Someone else had been watching the object too, closer, earlier, with far more authority. The stairwell door burst open. 3 men entered. Black jackets, no insignias. Government, corporate, military. Labels didn't matter. What mattered was the tension that followed them into the room, the way everyone instinctively leaned back from their consoles. "Dr. Hayes," the tall one said. He didn't introduce himself. Men like him never did. "We need to secure your data." Helena stiffened. "We haven't sent anything out." "We know," he replied calmly. "That's why we're here." The man behind him, square shoulders, expression carved from stone, stepped forward with a black hard case. "We'll need access to your servers." "Under whose authority?" Marcus snapped as he rose from his chair. The tall man didn't turn his head. "Authority is not your concern." Helena slowly stood. "This observatory is federally funded. We have protocols." "And those protocols have been overridden." His tone was gentle, but final. Behind him, the third man stepped to the central console. Without asking permission, he plugged in a small device, no bigger than a pack of gum, into the primary data port. The monitors flickered. The servers hummed louder. "Stop," Helena said sharply. "You can't just—" "Dr. Hayes," the tall man interrupted. "This is not a hostile action. It's a containment procedure, for everyone's safety." "Containment of what?" she shot back. Silence. Then a slow, deliberate glance toward the main viewing screen, where 3i ATS hovered frozen against the stars. Helena felt her skin crawl. They weren't just taking data. They were taking control. The tall man turned back to her. "We need to copy your raw observation files from the last 72 hours. "And then what? Delete the originals?" Again, silence. The kind that confirmed the answer. Helena's pulse thudded in her throat. "You can't erase this." "It won't matter.
Too many eyes have seen it, too many instruments. The tall man stepped closer, lowering his voice. Dr. Hayes, you and your team are the only ones who have seen what you think you have seen. The phrasing struck her like an electric shock. What we think we have seen? She repeated. The man said nothing. He didn't need to. The implication was clear. Official reality would soon diverge from actual reality, and the world would never know the difference. Marcus lunged forward. You can't rewrite physics. The tall man calmly intercepted him with one arm. We're not rewriting physics. We're managing panic. Helena stepped between them. If this thing is approaching Earth, we'll handle it. Handle it how? With discretion. Helena's voice shook. You don't understand what it's doing. It reacts to observation. It's learning. We have our own data, he said softly. Too softly. Helena's blood ran cold. How long have you been tracking it? She whispered. He didn't answer. That was answer enough. The device in the console beeped, a clear, sharp confirmation tone. The data was copied. Step aside, please, the third man said flatly. He typed a command into the console. Helena lunged forward. Don't! The screen went blank. Every terminal, every feed, every data set. The observatory fell into digital darkness, a cold void where knowledge had been seconds earlier. Then, with surgical precision, the file manager reappeared, empty. Entire nights of observation gone, every frame, every vector, every spectral line gone, deleted as if they had never existed. Helena felt her knees weaken. She gripped the edge of the console to stay upright. Why? She whispered. Why would you erase the only proof of what's coming? The tall man looked her in the eyes. His expression wasn't cruel. It was sorrowful. Because the public cannot be allowed to think it's coming. The words punched the air out of her lungs. You're going to lie, Marcus breathed. To everyone. We're going to protect them from conclusions they're not prepared to face. Helena stepped closer, fury and fear twisting inside her chest. This isn't a threat you can hide behind headlines. If it approaches Earth, people will see it. Not the way you saw it. That stopped her cold. What does that mean? She demanded. The man didn't blink. Objects like this don't show the same face to every observer. What you witnessed is not necessarily what others will. Helena's mind swirled. The spectral mimicry, the perfect photon repetition, the shape changing with perspective, the drift responding to measurement. They weren't just erasing data, they were erasing interpretation, replacing it with something safer, something that fit the world's expectations. You're not just suppressing information, she whispered. You're trying to shape what people believe the object even is. The man nodded once. Belief is easier to control than physics. Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. You don't understand. It's reacting to us. The more we observe it, the more it... We know. His calmness made it worse, much worse. Helena felt cold spread across her stomach, her ribs, her chest. If you know, she said slowly, then why erase our data? The tall man exhaled. A long, tired, deeply human sigh. Because what you saw is not universal, and because other facilities will not be allowed to observe it at the same resolution. You're restricting telescopes, Marcus choked, on a global scale? Already done. Helena staggered back, horrified. They had planned this, prepared for this, anticipated this. You knew it was coming, she whispered. You knew long before we saw it. This time the man didn't look away. We suspected, and we hoped we were wrong.
Helena felt a tremor run through her hands. "And now?" she whispered. "Now we know." The room felt colder, heavier, like the gravity had thickened. "Before we leave," the man said, gesturing to his team, "you'll need to sign non-disclosure directives, and we'll be installing additional surveillance in this facility." "You mean monitoring," Marcus growled. "Call it what you want. Nothing leaves this mountain without authorization." They handed out folders, thick ones, legally suffocating ones. Helena didn't touch hers. "You can threaten us. You can erase data. You can lock down the world's telescopes, but it won't matter. We saw it. We know what it is." The man studied her for a long moment. Then he spoke, soft but devastating. "You think you know what it is." Helena froze. The man continued. "Objects that cross interstellar space don't survive by chance. They survive by design, and they are rarely what they first appear to be." Her breath hitched. "You're afraid," she whispered, "all of you." His jaw clenched. "We're realistic." Then he said the one sentence Helena would remember for the rest of her life. 3I-ATS did not enter our system by accident, Dr. Hayes. And it is not approaching.
Not even the cold desert wind outside could match the temperature in the control room. It felt as if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something they weren't built to contain. Midnight approached, and yet no one dared step away from the monitors. Not after what had happened with the data wipe. Not after the object restored the feed, as if offended by their silence. Helena sat stiffly in her chair, back straight, eyes locked on the screen, with the intensity of someone staring down a predator. She had signed the non-disclosure. They all had. But no signature could contain what was happening. At 23:02, the telescope automatically triggered a new exposure. The frame loaded, and the room collectively leaned forward. 3I Atlas had crossed a threshold, one that none of them had seen before. The object no longer looked like a distant shape. It looked detailed, sharp enough that you could almost reach out and trace its edges with a fingertip. For the first time, surface texture became visible, but texture wasn't the right word. It was too organized, too patterned, too intentional. Thin bands of alternating brightness curved across its surface, not like mineral seams, but like plates, panels, segments arranged in a geometry that resisted any natural categorization. Helena felt nausea twist in her stomach. The human mind wasn't made to accept patterns that didn't belong to nature. And this belonged to something else entirely. "Record everything," she whispered. But the system was already recording. 3I Atlas filled the screen like an eye, watching, waiting, preparing. Marcus stepped closer, his voice hoarse. "It's showing us more surface area." Helena's breath hitched. "No, it's showing us what it wants us to see." Another frame appeared. The bands on the surface shifted, as if adjusting to the angle of the telescope. The pattern rearranged itself with a liquid precision that defied rigidity, defied physics, defied sanity. "Did it just move?" the intern whispered. "Not rotate, not drift. Move. The surface itself reconfiguring." Helena exhaled shakily. It's responding to high-resolution tracking. But the next moment stripped even that fragile explanation away. The spectral analyzer beeped. A new reading streamed across the bottom of the monitor. Frequency dips across multiple bands. Not emissions, absorptions. The object was absorbing radio waves from distant sources, not reflecting them, not distorting them, taking them in, tasting them. A technician swallowed loudly. It's interfering with background signals. Not interfering, Marcus replied. Sampling. Helena stared at the spectral graph. The object wasn't just visible now. It was interacting with the electromagnetic environment, as if scouring the sky for information, learning the solar system like an animal sniffing the air before entering unfamiliar territory. At 2317, the wide-field array triggered another alert. A secondary camera had captured something new, something the primary telescope had missed. A faint shimmer around the object. Not a halo, not a dust plume, a distortion, like heat haze in a vacuum where heat shouldn't exist. Magnify that, Helena ordered. The technician zoomed in. The distortion grew clearer. A ripple of space itself bending around the object in perfect symmetry. That's not thermal, Marcus said, or reflectance. Then what is it? A field, he whispered. Some kind of field. Helena felt her heartbeat thudding in her throat. No natural object generated a spatial field like that. No comet, no asteroid, no fragment, nothing from the interstellar medium. The realization settled like a blade against the spine. 3I Atlas wasn't just a visitor, it was a presence. And then the midpoint twist arrived, quiet and devastating. The object vanished. Not faded, not dimmed, vanished. One frame showed it in perfect detail. The next was pure empty space. Stars untouched, background constants unchanged. No, check the alignment, check the shutter. Alignment is good, the technician said, panic rising in his voice. Shutter is good, everything's good. Another frame, still empty, then another, and another, all empty, as if the object had never existed, as if it had simply slipped sideways out of reality. The intern's voice shook. Did it leave? Impossible, Marcus whispered. You can't just disappear at that velocity. Even if it accelerated, we'd see a trace, a trail, a blur, something. But nature wasn't obeying its own rules anymore. For 13 consecutive frames, 13 full seconds, the object was gone. Not hidden, not camouflaged, absent. And then, frame 14, it reappeared. Closer, much closer. Helena staggered backward, a hand flying to her mouth. It jumped, Marcus breathed. It didn't jump, Helena whispered. It repositioned. The word tasted wrong, but there was no other explanation. Objects don't teleport, but intentions do. The observatory filled with an oppressive, suffocating tension. Something was very wrong. This wasn't drift. This wasn't acceleration. This wasn't motion. This was decision. The intern suddenly gasped. Look! Look at the surface! They zoomed in. The bands had rearranged into a new pattern, one that resembled symmetry, but not human symmetry. Something alien, something functional. It looked like it was preparing. "What's it doing?" the technician whispered. Helena felt the answer forming, unbidden and terrifying. "It's choosing a configuration." "For what?" "Contact," she whispered. Then the spiral of tension began. More frames poured in. The object was now close enough that the reflected sunlight outlined its curvature like the hull of a ship. But not a ship built for travel. A ship built for arrival. Every new frame showed change, micro-adjustments, tiny alterations in shape, subtle contractions and expansions of the surface panels, like biological breathing, like mechanical calibration, like a machine waking up. The spectral readings grew chaotic, bands flickering, voices in the data. Not literal voices, data, distortions, patterns, repetitions, as if the object were testing multiple wavelengths, probing for response. "It's scanning," Marcus said. "Scanning what?" Helena asked. "Everything. Us, the atmosphere, the Earth's magnetic field, the solar wind, maybe even the telescope." They watched as one of the brightness bands pulsed. Once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. It reminded Helena of something primitive and instinctive, like a knock on the door. The technicians backed away from their screens. No one spoke. No one breathed. The next frame arrived. The object reoriented again, this time with unmistakable intention. By dawn, the desert sky above Mount Kirkland glowed with a pale orange haze, but no one inside the observatory noticed the sunrise. The team had not slept. They barely moved. Every monitor, every instrument, every nerve in the room pointed toward the same silent presence drifting closer through the void. 3I Atlas was no longer a distant anomaly or a scientific curiosity. It was something else now, something awake, something aware, something approaching with a pace that felt less like motion and more like inevitability. At 06:03 a.m., the telescope triggered automatically again, the new frame loaded with a soft electronic click. And this time, the object wasn't just brighter. It glowed. A soft, faintly pulsing radiance spread across the sweeping curvature of its surface. It wasn't sunlight. It wasn't reflection. It was emission. Controlled, deliberate, rhythmic. Marcus leaned forward, barely breathing. "It's signaling again." The light pulsed in triplets, slow, then faster, then slow again, a pattern that carried intention, not randomness. The spectral analyzer translated the brightness curve into numerical output. 3 pulses, pause. 3 pulses, longer pause. 3 pulses. Not Morse, not binary. Something older, more universal. "It's scanning," Helena whispered. "It's not sending a message, it's taking one." The intern's voice trembled. "Scanning what?" "Earth," Helena said. "Not individuals, not structures. The whole planet." The light pulses continued, soft and steady, like the heartbeat of something trying to understand the organism it was approaching. At 06:11, the geomagnetic sensors in the basement began to vibrate, barely detectable, a whisper of interference. But interference from what? Nothing in space should have affected Earth's magnetic field at this distance, not without enormous mass or enormous power. And 3i Atlas had neither, not according to physics, but physics had given up hours ago. The vibration grew stronger, rattling the metal shells. One of the technicians grabbed the railing of the stairwell. "What the hell is that?" Marcus looked at the readings, then at Helena, then back at the screen, each time more panicked than the last. "It's reflecting the magnetosphere," he whispered. "Not interfering, not distorting, responding." Helena felt her chest tighten. Responding meant comprehension. Comprehension meant adaptation. And adaptation meant the object wasn't just observing Earth, it was preparing for it. At 0614, a new frame arrived, and this one made the entire room recoil. The object wasn't just facing Earth anymore, it was oriented as if locking onto it, aligning itself with the equatorial plane, matching tilt, matching angle, matching rotation. It wasn't drifting, it wasn't falling, it was synchronizing. A ship taking up a parking orbit, a predator aligning before a strike, a visitor preparing to enter the airspace of a world it should not know how to read. Helena whispered the words, barely audible even to herself. "It's matching Earth's rotation speed." Marcus shook his head violently. "That's impossible. It would need to calculate." "It already did, and it understands the pattern better than we do." The room felt smaller, the ceiling lower, the very air thinning. The technicians clustered near the screens as if proximity could shield them from the implications. At 0622, the object brightened again, but this time the light was different. Sharp, narrow, controlled like a beam. A thin band swept across the blackness, then passed directly over Earth's limb. "What was that?" the intern cried. "A LiDAR sweep?" "Something more advanced, something precise." Helena tore her eyes from the monitor. "Record it, every wavelength, every angle. If this is contact, we need to know how—" She stopped, not because she lost her train of thought, because something had changed. The atmospheric monitors began to spike. Oxygen, nitrogen, trace gases, micro-level fluctuations that made no physical sense. "We're getting induced resonance," a technician stammered. "It's exciting particles in the upper atmosphere." Helena stared at the readings, horrified. The object was altering Earth's ionosphere from orbit, gently, carefully, like a hand brushing across the surface of water. "It's testing density, testing composition." Marcus looked sick. Why would it need to test composition? Helena swallowed hard. "To know how to enter." Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Terrifying. At 0632, the object stopped pulsing. The glow vanished. The hull darkened back into its unnatural, light-absorbing black. Marcus exhaled shakily. Maybe it's done. Maybe the scan is complete. Helena didn't answer, because she saw it first. The subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the object's silhouette. A contraction along one side, a spreading across another, a ripple, like a muscle flexing. "It's changing shape," Helena whispered. The intern backed away from the screen. "Why is it doing that?" "To minimize drag, it's forming an entry profile." Marcus paled. No, that would mean—" The object shifted again, and again. Each movement, slow but intentional, the way a creature might stretch its limbs before leaping. "It's preparing to enter the atmosphere. This is it." Someone whispered a prayer. Someone else swore. Another started to cry quietly, trying not to be heard. At 0640, the first emergency alert came from NASA's Deep Space Network. Then a second, then a third. Helena didn't open them. She knew what they would say. The world's instruments had finally seen what Mount Kirkland had been seeing for hours.
3-eye atlas wasn't passing through. It wasn't leaving. It wasn't orbiting. It was approaching Earth, directly, deliberately, slowly enough to be precise, fast enough to be inevitable. At 0643, something unexpected happened. The object decelerated, sharply, cleanly, like a spacecraft hitting retrothrust. Marcus gasped. It's braking. Helena stared at the numbers. No natural object decelerates in deep space. None. It's braking for controlled entry. It's landing. The word hung in the air like smoke. No one moved. No one blinked. No one even breathed. At 0646, Helena made a decision that would either save humanity or doom her entire career. We send a signal. What? Marcus nearly shouted. We can't send anything. We don't know what it responds to. We know exactly what it responds to. Observation, measurement, patterns. She typed quickly, hands trembling, a simple encoded waveform. Not a message, not a greeting, a reflection of its own signal, a mirror to show it they were learning too. Helena, stop. Marcus grabbed her wrist. You can't just talk to it. I'm not talking. I'm listening back. She hit send. A soft ping echoed through the room. The wave shot upward, invisible, silent, fragile as a breath. The technicians stared at the monitors in terror. The intern whispered, "What if it sees that as a threat?" Helena didn't answer, because the answer was already coming. The object reacted instantly. Its glow reignited, violently bright this time, like a star flaring into existence. The whole expanded in 3 places, contracting in others, as if assembling a new shape, a new configuration. "What is it doing?" Marcus whispered.